academic speaker, author, life coach, nurse, poet. She's known nationally, internationally. She's an ordained Unity minister, and she has served as Vice President of Education and as Dean of Administration at Unity Institute and Seminary. She is a National Ministry Skills Consultant for Unity Worldwide Ministries. She is a consultant for boards around the country for leadership teams. She was doing that yesterday, did a wonderful job. I was there, ministers were there. It was a great workshop. And she's also a professional certified coach. She has a PhD in religious studies from Emerson University. She has a Master's of Science in Nursing from the University of Missouri. She is an author of 7 books. She has multiple CDs and written numerous articles. By the way, those books and some of the CDs are in the lobby today following the service. She is also being honored at our People's Convention this summer that I referred to a little earlier. She has been selected to be the recipient of the 2017 Charles Fillmore Award for Visionary Leadership. So it's a great honor, and we congratulate you, Toni, on that. Her title this morning is Synchro-Divinity. I love that title. You're going to hear more about that. This is a beautiful lady, very talented, and has so much to offer. We thank you for being in Unity itself, for being at our church this morning. Please go give a warm welcome for Reverend Toni Boehm.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here with you. And the talk today is Synchro-Divinity, and I just want to show you. It's the title of my new book. So pretty picture here. Just wanted to share that with you. To begin, you might say, what is Synchro-Divinity? Does she have that wrong? Isn't the word synchronicity? And I'm saying no, that the idea of Synchro-Divinity takes synchronicity to another step. So let me set the stage for what Synchro-Divinity means. I want to start with a story about Charles Fillmore, our co-founder in Unity, with his wife Myrtle. And the story is set in 1916, and Charles and Myrtle are writing the Unity magazine. It's a monthly publication that comes out every month. And one of the questions in the magazine in 1916 was this: how is it that when I go to my mailbox and I pick up your magazine, that when I touch it, the magazine begins to vibrate in my hand? And Charles answers and says, in many ways, I'm paraphrasing, he says, it is no accident. There is a vibration, and I know this to be true, consciously imbued within these pages, and it is contagious as it is observed and recognized. And the key word there is as it is observed and recognized. So we live in a vibrational universe, right? But we have to recognize at what level are we vibrating. Now, Mr. Fillmore also says in his writings that in every cell of our being, now I really want you to hear this, every cell of our being, look at your hand. How many cells do you think are there in your hand? How many are in your body? Trillions of cells. And he says every cell in our being has substance, life, and intelligence. Substance, life, and intelligence. And he metaphysically interprets these 3 words, and he says substance is the divine energy that underlies all manifestation. Divine energy underlying all manifestation lives in every cell of our being, which means we are one. We are one with this energy field that we live and move and walk amongst within. And as we align with that field and come more and more aware, in unity we call it the Christ consciousness. In quantum physics, they call it the unified field of consciousness. Whatever you call it, as we become more aware of this idea of being one in this field, and then keep lifting our gaze, lifting our gaze, lifting our gaze, meaning lifting our vibration. Even when Jesus, the master teacher, says, behold, the fields are ripe for harvest. He's saying, behold, there's a higher vibration that we can always be seeing and looking towards that's really working to give us our good. So substance in every cell of our being, life in every cell of our being, the life that gives us breath. But more than that, it's the perfect pattern of wholeness, the idea of how it is that we can pray and have things happen because this pattern of wholeness lives within us. And as we know that pattern of wholeness for our lives, wonderful things begin to happen. The synchro-divinities begin to pop. And then the last is the intelligence. We have within every cell of our being the intelligence, not an intelligence based upon an IQ. We have the intelligence of the universe, which is why we can go into the silence, tap into it, and feel an essence, feel a vibration, receive messages. Friends, this isn't something special that only seers and psychics can do. This is something that we are all being prepared for. And we're the pioneers. We're the pioneers who have said yes to this happening in our lives. And that's part of why you're sitting here today, because you have said yes. And so, for me, this really came into being, well, it started when I was little. It started when I was like 5 years old. I started to know this idea of abundance, the idea of prosperity, the idea of vibration. I didn't even have a word for it. I just knew there was something everywhere that wanted to support me. I knew it in my being. Now, the interesting thing is that a very trusted person who I loved a lot, I crawled up on their knee and I said to them, and it was my Uncle John, and I said, Uncle John, I said, this world loves me. This world wants me to have everything. This world wants me to be rich. And Uncle Johnny looked at me with these beautiful blue eyes and he goes, oh, honey, that's a wonderful thought, but you live in Frog Hollow. He said, we're poor. So he set a vibration going within me. Here I was at this high vibration of knowing who I was, and this little girl then had the vibration lowered, and it took me nearly 30 years to release that energy field and allow the true and perfect energy of who I am to start to burst forth. But it wasn't wrong. It was exactly what I needed in order to get me to where I am, and I know that now too. So we live in a unified field of energy that's always wanting to grow us, but as it's growing us, we have to be about making choices. And that's where, for me, this idea of Synchro-Divinity comes in. So Synchro-Divinity, and this is how I define it, is I began to notice that events were happening in my life, and although they appeared random, there actually was a connection to them, that this event led to this event, led to this event, and the way that they were unfolding at higher and higher levels was based upon three things. It was based upon, is what Mr. Fillmore said, as we observe and recognize. So the first thing is we must recognize that there's an energy that's working to support us in the universe. And it's always working to support us. And as we recognize that it's working to support us, we then, this is what I've seen, is that when these big events happen, whatever they are in our lives, that there's a choice to be made. And the choice is calling us then to take an action around something. And by being willing, so I'm going to use Howard as an example. Howard gets this call from Spirit that it's time, that it's time. Trust me, I know a lot of people who get the call that it's time, and they go, well, I better wait till I get another job. You know, and that's not what Spirit asks us to do. Spirit often is asking us to take that leap in faith, to make the choice, to trust the universe, to dance at the edge of mystery, and allow the next piece of whatever is to happen to happen. And so it is that the synchro-divine events, I call them an event or series of events that are awe-inspiring, unexpected, unforeseen, unanticipated, unplanned, and yet seemingly guided by an invisible force working to grow us to the next level on the spiral of evolution. As we stay open, as we observe them, as we make choices that are about, and when I say that about making a choice, the moment you make the choice to play small, you've set an action into motion. Because it's all energy, and energy doesn't lie. It's all energy, and so it is. So I want to, I didn't tell this story in the first service. I just feel like I want to tell it now. In 2005, I was vice president at Unity. I was the dean of the ministerial school. I had 9 departments. It was, for me, the epitome of everything I had ever wanted to achieve in life, at least I thought. And we were at a retreat, and we were in the activity center, which is built like this, except that where you have carpeting, there's linoleum. And I had just come back from Peru, and I had just worked with a shaman. Spent 2 weeks in the jungles with a shaman, working on, for me, my desire was to become a shamanessa. You know, and so I was 2 weeks in the jungle, working just imbuing myself in that energy field. And I come back, and I'm in meditation, and the meditation, I hear the words, it is complete. It is complete. And I knew that they were saying, the Spirit, the universe, the whatever, was saying that it was time to leave. I couldn't believe my ears, but I knew it was time to leave. So as I'm contemplating how that would happen, we're at this retreat. And Daniel Nahmad's there, and he's playing, and we're dancing. And in this dancing, I decide that I'm going to go over to the side. And so we're dancing, the music's playing. I go to turn as I'm dancing, and I slip on the linoleum, and I propel myself and hit my head on the wooden arm of the chair, just like this, and knock myself out. And when I come to, I have no short-term memory. And I had in that moment, within the next few days, to take a leave of absence from everything I loved. Because I had disrupted all of my neural pathways, and I had a mild traumatic brain injury. And so for the first week, I sat in anger and upset. And at the end of the first week of just being in that field of energy, I went into meditation. And in meditation, went into a really deep meditation, going back to the jungles, working with the shaman. Going back to that moment where the shaman says to me that I was literally at a fork in the road, and that it was, for me, time to make a choice. And so I'm in that moment in the jungles, and I hear the word yes. 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 And I know that yes, underneath it, the energy, I feel, yes, Toni, is your empowerment system. Yes is going to move you through this. What you say yes to right now will determine the rest of your life. will determine the rest of your life. So I came out of that meditation, I picked myself up, I put on my big girl pants, and I said, okay, no more feeling sorry for myself. I'm going to do what I need to do, and I'm going to move forward, with or without all the neural pathways being together. So I knew I took a leave of absence. I decided to work on myself, did all the healing exercise, but more than that, the choice I made was to go back into the Fillmore teachings. And I decided that if I was going to rewire my brain, I was going to rewire it with something useful. And so I went back into the Fillmore writings, and every day, even though I did not have much of an attention span, I went back into the writings, and I sat with those writings every day and began to rebuild my neural pathways in a positive way. And I kept using that, yes is your empowerment system, yes is your empowerment system. And it took 18 months for the neural pathways to come back. And I remember the day, it was January 10th, 2007, where the fog actually, I could feel it lifted from my brain. But I also knew at the end of those 18 months that I was a different person. I was a different person. And here was my Synchro-Divine event that let me know. So a friend of mine, somewhere in that middle of January, called me and said, why don't you come over to the archives and let's just nose around a bit, the archives at Unity Village. And I went to the archives, and so I said, okay, I'll come over. And he was in the back, and he said, well, Eric, who was the librarian, is letting us back into the back of the archives, and Eric was letting us go through some boxes that hadn't been opened for umpty-ump years. And I put my hands into this box. I'm going to cry. And I picked up a manuscript. The manuscript was written in 1946 by Charles Fillmore, 1947 by Charles Fillmore, 6 months before he died, and he hand-carried it to the archives. And written on the first page, the archivist says, Mr. Fillmore said, leave this until the world is ready. And I found that manuscript. And it vibrated in my hands like the lady that found the magazine. It vibrated in my hands, and I knew that the world was ready for it. And I took that manuscript, and I found some friends, and when we typed it into Word, and it was the story of the soul's evolution, using the Gospels as a template for that soul evolution. And I was able we put it into Word, and we sent it out to Unity ministers so that it could start to create a life of its own. But it was a Synchro-Divine event, an awe-inspiring event that was about changing the course of my life. And I knew from that moment on that my life would be committed to sacred service. I knew that my life would be a series of Synchro-Divine events that I did not know what was going to happen to me next, but I was going to be open to being the universal impulse in this universe to allow that impulse. It was no more Toni, it was no more labels, it was no more vice president of this or head of that. That had no meaning for me anymore. No more. It was about how can I be in sacred service to the world. And as I be in sacred service, because this is a vibrational universe and I'm carrying a vibration of joy and service and only wanting to allow the next level of conscious evolution to be that which would be coming forth, I knew the money would come. And that, my friends, was the gift from that moment. And I resigned my position at Unity, and I did that in January of actually 2006, after the end of my, and I just went on to do what was ever next in my energy field. And that's when I went on to the ministry skills team and then started working with ministries in crisis and inviting them into seeing energy in a new way. Because one of the things that came to me later was a quote by Nikola Tesla. And the Tesla quote is, if you want to know how the universe works, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. Energy, vibration, and frequency. And what I know is that Mr. Fillmore already knew that. It didn't take quantum physics or quantum science. This is part of our foundational teaching. Everything is energy, vibration, and frequency. And as we are willing to live in that idea of the one, the universal impulse, the oneness blessing, whatever you want to call it, as we live in that field of consciousness, our life begins to shift dramatically because we're living from a place of joy. We're living from a place of anticipation. We're living from a place of no fear. We know that whatever's happening out here, we might be called to be a spiritual, I call it a spiritual actionist. But the spiritual action that we're to put into place is to be the highest vibration that we can be and to be that field of energy that touches other people's lives and changes lives. That's who we're called to be, my friends. That's what it's all about. And as we do that, then the synchro-divine moments will show up in our lives. And I just want to leave you with two things. I just want to share with you that I truly believe, because of the teachings of Charles Fillmore, that the Bible holds incredible things for us. That the Bible, because he left us with a metaphysical interpretation of the Bible. But the last work that he did, that idea of the four Gospels and it being the blueprint for our soul evolution, I just want to give you a couple of those. One, he talks about, Mr. Fillmore talked about the idea that when the master teacher said, let your yeses be yes and your noes be no, that Mr. Fillmore said, he called it, he was actually teaching us about the law of mind action. Today we would say he was teaching us about the law of attraction. He was saying, let your yeses be yes, and the more that you clearly imprint upon the field that's within you with your yeses, the more power is in the field. And I just want you to do this with me for 1 second. Will you say with me with a great joy and enthusiasm, yes, 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 yes. That's how you imprint, by letting your yeses and nos be very clear. But we are a yes universe. We live in a yes universe. Now I want you to say, uh-huh, maybe, sure. Yeah. Not the same kind of energy as when you have clarity in the space, right? So the first thing I want to leave you with for this week is be the space of yes. Watch yourself. Just watch yourself and watch how you're either clear or you're unclear. And when you're unclear, make the choice. Observe, choose, choice, and make the action. Make a choice to bring clarity to the space. The second thing is, you can only do this if you're willing to be the space of self-observation. Charles Fillmore says self-observation is the prelude. He said honest self-observation is the prelude. And honest self-observation is not, are you angry? No. Honest self-observation is really being aware of what's going on inside of you. What's the vibration? What's the energy? What's the feeling that you're having? And then shift. And then shift. So self-observation. Yes, self-observation. And 3 goes back to 2 and 1. Be intentionality in action, friends. Be intentional about what you're doing. Be intentional about how you're showing up. But be intentional that you are a vibrational being and your work is to bring a higher vibration to this world. That's our work. And the last is claim the dominion, the law of dominion. The law of dominion is that you were given dominion and authority and the power to subdue any negative thoughts, because you are the presence of the living Christ. Now, I invite you to say that with me, but I invite you to put in one or energy, whatever it is that works for you. But I want you to say that with me as I get ready to end this talk with us. I am the presence of the living Christ. I am the presence of the living Christ. I am the presence of the living Christ. And so it is, and so you are, and so it shall be forever and ever and ever. Matol lehe melkuta. God bless you all.